Born in Boston, the son of an East Coast intellectual and an independent Hoosier wild man gone civilized, I had my first plane ride before I was more than a couple weeks old, to the picturesque mountains of Sun Valley, Idaho. I lived there until I was almost 3 before coming to Indiana, so I can't remember very much. I remember the house being full of sun and my mom. I remember snow in the winters and the close proximity of the wilderness. Every Christmas we would climb the mountain behind our house and cut an evergreen right out of the forest to decorate. There weren't a lot of toddlers around where we lived and my mom wasn't working, so I spent most of my time with her. I must have been pretty good company because I was a bright kid, walking and talking before the age of 1. The consistent interaction with my mother throughout my toddlerhood accelerated my early development. My mom is very nurturing, and she's also an expert on educating very young children. I would say it only took me about 2 years to establish favorable outcomes in the first 3 of Erickson's stages, developing a very strong sense of trust, autonomy, and initiative. It was during this time in my life, I think, that the acquisition of knowledge became the key to my own self-actualization. Right before I turned 3, we moved to Indiana. I remember spending a good portion of the truck ride reading, although most of the books had companion cassette tapes. We were moving to spend more time with my father's parents, and it was my dad's influence that granted me a positive outcome in the 4th of Erickson's stages. He often encouraged me to discover how things worked, and if I couldn't figure it out, he probably had some idea. Camping was already a large part of my life, and by the time we left our home in Sun Valley, I had already spent time exploring the Craters of the Moon National Park and spent a week camping in Oregon. When we got to Indiana, we spent a few months living with my grandparents on their farm in Avon. Well, I say farm, but there weren't really any crops or livestock. Most of the land had been sold off before I was born, but the barn still existed and there was still plenty of land to play on. It would remain an environment of independence and discovery until they died. Preschool was difficult for me, though. I started off somewhere in Avon, and all I remember is crying to be allowed to go home. I spent a lot of time hiding from people. Luckily, we quickly moved out of Avon and into Broad Ripple. My mom got me out of my old preschool and into the IHC, where aside from some minor fighting issues, things were much better. When I was 5, my family, including my infant brother, went on a camping trip to the Badlands. One night, we were eating dinner forced inside our borrowed tent by the rising winds of a tremendous storm. Suddenly, one of the aluminum tent poles collapsed. It was little Dakota's first do-or-die moment, or at least it felt like it. My little brother was howling in terror, and there was nothing anyone could do about the tent from inside it. Somebody had to hold the tent up while my mom took care of Dave, and my dad figured out how to fix the tent, and that somebody had to be me. My mom tells me that I then went into the car to comfort my little brother while she and my dad cleaned up the tent, but honestly, I just remember being slapped in the face with canvas by the wind, and then looking at my dad fixing the splint on the broken tent pole. Elementary school presented some more challenges as I began my education from the IPS system in Cold Springs Elementary. My first exposure to a yo mama joke led me to my last use of violence against another person out of anger, and my first best friend, the same person incidentally. The pattern of making new friends by instigating dramatic events with them didn't go away for a while. At Cold Springs, I had a mixture of very good and some pretty bad teachers, with my worst experience being in 1st grade. By 3rd grade, I'd solidified my familiarity with the formal operational mode of theater. Miss Croniak. I wish I had pictures of her. She was amazing. She would change our classroom into a completely different setting for each unit. She was primarily a science teacher, and I think it was due to my love of participating in her class that I realized that I learned better when I was actively participating. I made my first original joke when I was in 3rd grade. My leg had fallen asleep and I was complaining about it and trying to get it to wake up. Suddenly I looked over to my mom and I said, "I suppose this means it's going to be up all night." I spent most of my energy in then 4th and 5th grade climbing the social ladder and learning how to be cool. Unfortunately, we moved again right before 6th grade, and my awesome ponytail was now making me the androgynous new nerdy kid. I got bullied quite a lot, as a matter of fact, and it made me very unsure of who I was. Or to look at another way, it made me less aware of how unsure everybody else was about who they were. It did end during the 7th grade, so I had one peaceful year of middle school, but by that point I wasn't all that social. And although my group of friends were all pretty smart and funny, we weren't particularly popular. I was old enough for summer camp by now, but my real summer vacations were still camping trips. We drove to and camped at the Grand Canyon, Niagara Falls, Devil's Tower, Mount Rushmore, Mesa Verde, Alaska, and in the Redwood Forest. By high school, I'd become pretty confident in myself, despite my middle school troubles, and although I still wasn't getting my belongingness needs filled as much as I had wanted them to, it took less to fulfill them, so I started to be more secure in my identity. School was easy, even while taking a full load of APID classes, partly because I was a fast and eager learner, but mostly because I was only working hard enough to get C's and stay in the AP track. Unconcerned about my GPA, I still managed to graduate with top honors. When I got into college, that same general malaise towards commitment caused me to bounce from major to major, from industrial design to criminal justice to political science, then philosophy, then finally to education. During this time, I was struggling to develop a real identity. So much of who I thought I was based on what people were telling me to do, and finally I had to be responsible for myself. My love for camping combined with my love for music, and I started going to Bonnaroo. I'm at a point now where I'm comfortable not knowing what the future holds for me, because I think my worldview is flexible enough to handle any changes, until it all comes tumbling down again. But then, as always, I intend to be the one to fix it, if only because I